more about this series, please go to our Facebook page, which is called Logotherapy South Africa. And if you'd like to find out more about logotherapy and the courses we offer at the Institute, please visit our website, www.vifisa.com. Okay, and then without further ado, I'd just like to thank and welcome our host for the evening, Dr. Isak Maria. I'm sure he needs little introduction to most of you, but just in case anybody isn't quite sure who he is, Dr. Maria is an emergency medical doctor, and he has been a student of logotherapy for many years and has a long-standing association with the Viktor Frankl Institute of Logotherapy South Africa. It's wonderful to have him back with us and presenting something as part of us. Great to see you again, Isak. Thank you for your contribution, your ongoing contribution to the field of logotherapy and to the Viktor Frankl Institute of South Africa. Over to you, and I hope you have a wonderful evening, everybody. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Mark, and thank you for the nice words of introduction. It indeed is my privilege to be here to speak to our colleagues, and then also many of the doctors that is not only in the company that I work for, ER Consulting, but also some external colleagues. So welcome from my side to everybody, and thank you so much, Mark and the Viktor Frankl Institute, for allowing me to once again present something, and something very close to the heart. We're talking about burnout in doctors tonight, and then also finding meaning in a demanding workplace. So because many of the people around the table are not familiar with the concepts of logotherapy and what the principles are, I'm going to take it upon myself just to give us a 2 or 3 minute introduction on the field of logotherapy and what it offers us. So logotherapy was founded by a man with the name of Viktor Frankl, and many of you may be aware of the book Man's Search for Meaning, which is a very good introduction to the field of logotherapy. Viktor Frankl was a doctor and also a psychiatrist and a neuropsychiatrist from Vienna, who started the principles of logotherapy. So he's also called the fourth school of psychology is logotherapy. Now, you may remember that Freud said that everything in life is about the will to pleasure. We live because we want pleasure. Adler, then again, the second school of psychology, said that everything that we do is because we want to gain more power. And that's the basic driving force of being a human. And there are many others after that, but Frankl said that our will and our reason here on earth is to find meaning. And that's also why I wrote the book, Man's Search for Meaning. Now, the operative word in Man's Search for Meaning is the word search. And it's Frankl's postulation that we all have this constant search for something ever since our birth until we die one day, and that thing that we search for is meaning. And for those colleagues around the table that think I'm going to tell you how to find that meaning, I have some bad news for you tonight, because I cannot tell you what the meaning of life is, which is where the conundrum comes in. Meaning is something that you yourself have to find in whatever it is that you do. And Frankl told us that you will find meaning mostly in 3 forms. So Frankl talks about the values of life. And those values can be creational, experiential, and attitudinal values. So creational values is that you may find meaning in building something, or painting something, or writing a piece of music. The experiential values would be through things that you enjoy and do and experience. You may, like me, go on long overland trips and enjoy nature. And there's a whole talk about that as well. And you can also find meaning through your attitudinal values. So everything in life can be put into these three sets of values, which can help you to find meaning. And this meaning that you find can then lead to transcendence in your life. So the word transcendence means that you can rise above your circumstances. You are more than just a suffering person or a person that feels that you're floating from day to day, etc. So back to Frankl. Frankl was a Jewish doctor who ended up in a concentration camp in Auschwitz. And he did some very good research before actually writing his book. And he found that your chances of surviving the Holocaust and the terrible things that happened to people in these camps, apart from the people that were obviously gassed when they arrived and killed upon arrival, but the people that actually survived and had a life after were people that actually could find a meaning through one of these three values in their life. So Frankl, one of the attitudinal values is finding meaning through suffering. So many of the people in the concentration camps where they suffered had a reason to live because they wanted to go back to a loved one, a family, their home country, whatever it may have been. And it was different for every single person in those concentration camps. And you'll see how that ties in with what we're talking about tonight, which is burnout in doctors. So I've also recently discovered this little gem by Alice Munro called Dear Life, which is the winner of the Nobel Prize in Literature in 2013. And I just want to share one sentence from the back of the book, actually written by the New York Times, which says, Dear life build to form a radiant, indelible portrait of just how dangerous and strange ordinary life can be. It says how dangerous and strange ordinary life can be. And that really struck me in terms of we all think that we live ordinary lives, but those ordinary lives can actually be quite exhilarating, can be quite dangerous. You may suffer from many things in this ordinary life, and no life is ordinary. So when we look at the word an ordinary life, it doesn't mean that your life is ordinary. It means that what you may perceive as an ordinary life is actually something that is quite dangerous. And in this quite dangerous ordinary life that you live, many things may befall you. And this dangerous ordinary life that you live is many times in a workplace itself. Because we also know that about 50% of our waking lives we spend at work. Now, that has a profound impact on us. And as part of the studying logotherapy, we also did a study, and some of the doctors here tonight may have been involved in that, in 2018. And I want to talk about what we found in that study, and quite an interesting thing, which also tied in with international literature, and this was done specifically amongst emergency unit doctors in South Africa, found that 64% of emergency unit doctors are burnt out. Okay, that is quite a large number for what is burnout. We also found in this study, because I was thinking to myself, was Frankl really correct in what he's saying, that you've got a bigger chance of survival if you find meaning in what you do, in where you are. And our study itself showed that there's actually a direct correlation between people that find meaning in their workplace and their chances of survival, in inverted commas, in an emergency unit or as a doctor. We found that we did a retrospective study as well, which showed that if you don't find your job and what you do meaningful, that your chances of leaving the profession of emergency medicine within 5 years was nearly 80%. And I'll repeat that. If you don't find what you do meaningful as a doctor, your chances of leaving the profession of emergency medicine specifically is more than 80% within 5 years. So there are many colleagues around the table that have been with us for more than 5 years, which is brilliant news because you find what you do meaningful to a large extent. And this is also a great thing that we can help our colleagues with, and we'll get to that a little bit later. But let's talk about what is burnout, because burnout is a term that is just bandied about by everybody. You know, if you've got a headache, you're burnt out, okay? If you've worked a long day, you're burnt out. But burnout actually has quite a specific and different definitions depending on who you look for. So, and depending on who you read. It is also a silent and stigmatized phenomenon. Although people bandy the term around that I'm burnt out, no one really wants to admit that I don't like my job, I don't like my patients, I battle getting up in the morning, and I've lost my will of actually going to work. And you know what? I'd rather go and write a book or something or whatever. I'm saying write a book. That's one of the things I want to do. But so that's a bad example. But you want to do something else than what you are doing because you have lost the meaning in what you do. So there's a few things that came out in this study which was actually quite profound, especially for those people that are not doctors. And it was even surprising for me, who has been a doctor for more than 30 years, that the average emergency unit doctor, regardless of seniority, cries at work. And I'm talking of cry, tears running down their face, at least 3 times a week. Now that in itself is alarming. And the things that you mostly cry about are about the fact that you don't find this meaningful anymore. You want your shift to end. You want to go home. And you see every next shift as actually a burden to yourself. So burnout is not something that you can go on holiday for. You can go for 2 weeks on holiday. When you come back, you're burnt out again, although you physically rested. Burnout also works on the dopamine axis of your brain. So Sean and I made a very good video where Sean explained the physiology behind burnout and the signs and the symptoms of burnout. And we'll also make that link available. I hope many of you have watched the video because I sent it as a link earlier. If you haven't, you can go on YouTube and you can go to Meaningful Workshops, which is a project that Sean and I are doing, and you can learn more about what burnout does to your body. But let's see what are the signs of burnout. So one of the first things, or before we get there, let's just first think back for the doctors around the table. Think back to when you were 18, okay? And let's say you are now 30. When you were 18, you could not in your wildest dreams imagine that by the time that you are 30 or 35, that you would not like being a doctor and that you would not look forward to your next shift and would like to find other ways of spending your life and your time. Because you may at that age have seen, I want to do something meaningful, and what is more meaningful than actually to help people, to be there in society and to make a difference. And each person has their own reasons why they became a doctor. But think back, each one of you, why did you become a doctor? And now, 10 years plus into your career, does that still hold true in your life? And unfortunately, many of us say no. And many of our colleagues progress along those roads of getting to the point of saying no to the profession or even to emergency medicine. And it's not an overnight thing that happens. It happens slowly and insidiously. It's like boiling a frog. It happens very slow, but the frog dies in the end. And if you don't know what to look for, and if you're not vigilant to it, and if you don't know how to combat it, it is something that will boil you alive eventually. So what are the signs? I think many of you know something called compassion fatigue. You just don't care anymore. You stop caring for your patients. You stop being a human next to the bedside. You stop interacting with your patients, and eventually you stop interacting with life, because this also spills over. You take your work home. It spills over into your home life, where you get home and all you want to do is sit down and do nothing. You stop reading things. Nothing gives you pleasure anymore, because the dopamine in your brain has to such an extent be depleted, that there is no will to meaning anymore. You don't find meaning in anything you do. The enjoyable book that you used to read, or the walks that you used to go on, and the time that you spent with your family are just not pleasurable anymore. And it's got nothing to do with fatigue. It's about the dopamine in your brain and your body telling you that I don't want this anymore. So why do specifically doctors, and more specifically emergency unit doctors, burn out? And I'm sure many of our colleagues around the table have different things. I'll tell you what the literature would tell us. And it says because the emergency unit is an environment of constant fear. F-E-A-R, fear. Now, fear burns dopamine very rapidly. And what are you fearing? Well, it's a minefield. Remember what Alice Munro says. It says, the dangers of the ordinary life. You work in a very dangerous place, not only physically, but emotionally. It's a dangerous place that you work in, because you work in an environment where you work with people's lives. And you know that each of your actions may have the consequence of permanent morbidity or mortality on a human being. And that is a big burden that you walk around with. There are very few professions where a mistake leads to the loss of a life. You're also working in a medico-legal environment where your mistake, or not even your mistake, may cause you to have legal consequences. Our doctor-patient ratio in South Africa is some of the highest in the world, even though we're sitting currently with doctors that are unemployed, which is something that adds to this. So you don't want to run away from your job, because you know it's very difficult to find employment in South Africa. So you rather stay in this marriage of convenience because you're worried about unemployment, starting your own practice, which is extremely difficult in South Africa, or just making ends meet at the end of the month. You're constantly in fear, you're constantly depleting your dopamine, and you are constantly thinking, how can I get out of this? And I may be painting a very bleak picture here. That's not my intention. It will get more cheerful in a minute. Just bear with me. But this is the position that many of our colleagues find ourselves in. So they find themselves in an environment of emotional detachment, not enjoying anything. Sleep is severely disturbed. People can't sleep anymore, even when they're off. We also work shifts in emergency medicine and in medicine. So there's sleep disturbances, which stuffs your dopamine up even more. And in the end, you become completely detached from life. And eventually you become even more detached from yourself. Because once you are detached from yourself, it is a very hard way to come back. And I'll just read one or two sentences that came to mind, which I wrote. Burnout is more than simply working too hard. It's a state of emotional exhaustion, depersonalization, and a diminished sense of personal accomplishment. It occurs when people who enter the profession with passion and meaning slowly begin to feel emotionally depleted and disconnected from the work they once loved. Now, here's our first hint of how we can fight burnout. You did once love medicine. You did once love helping others. You once were not emotionally depleted, and you were there for your patients. And many of our colleagues still are. And one would argue that a little bit of, not a little bit, but a little bit of disillusionment happens in any and every career, not only in medicine. It is how you face that thing that you go through. Because relatively early in your life, in your early 30s, you are facing quite a few things. You're probably new and relatively new into a relationship, a marriage, or a new partner or a permanent partner. You probably had some children recently. You probably bought a house, okay? You've got 2 dogs and 3 cats, and you've got a new car, right? Those things not only come with financial burdens, they come also with time burdens. They also work on the dopamine in your brain. So between the ages of about 28 to 35, this ordinary life of yours is giving you a battering, right? You struggle with motherhood, with fatherhood, with being a good husband or wife. You struggle financially to get there. And you look at the guys who are 55 and 60 and you say, if only I could be like them. And that's one of the problems, because you're looking at other people and you want to be like other people. And the moral of the story is that you only have to be what you want to be. So, and there starts the road, in that starts the road to discovery. Because human beings, if we go back to Frankl, naturally searches for meaning in their own lives. They don't search for the meaning in other people's lives. They search for the meaning in their own lives. So if you think back of when you were 18, put yourself back into that dream that you had. You didn't dream to be, in many cases, where you are today. You had a different dream. You were dreaming of a happy life, a meaningful life, where you were of meaning to your patients, or in other professions, in meaning to your clients, meaning to what you do. You wanted to make a difference in life. And one of the things that you can do is to sit back and talk to that former self and ask, hello, former self, where have I lost you along the way? The shadow that walked next to me since I was small. What happened to you? Where are you? What is it that you wanted in life? And what is it that you got in life? And it may be an amazing answer. I've got exactly what I want in life. And isn't that an amazing thing to work forward and towards? We all want to leave a legacy in our lives. Sean and I had a big debate the other day about legacy. So we went back and read a bit about legacy. So what is legacy? It is the will or the search to leave something of endurance. Because we all know that we are mortal beings. And whether you're religious or not and believe in an afterlife or not, there's only one guarantee I can give you in life, and that is that you will die. So people have this natural will to legacy. And the reason for that is actually a genetic thing. And if you believe in evolution, whether you do or not, people that didn't want to leave a legacy and for whom legacy was not important were probably selected out of the gene pool because they didn't do stuff, okay? So the lions caught them long ago because they didn't build themselves proper shelters, and they probably didn't have children, and they didn't look after their children well. So genetically, they were selected out of the gene pool. So we can, to a large extent, assume that each one of us listening to this tonight probably wants to leave a legacy. And one of the things that you can ask your former self, but more importantly, your current self, is what is the legacy that I want to leave? Because that is one of the biggest ways that you can find your will to meaning. Because you can also remind yourself that even though you don't think so, you have made a difference to everybody that works. You have made a difference and touched someone else's life today. Whether you work or not, I was going to say in a doctor's environment, but in everybody's environment. You make a difference to everybody's lives every day. You can choose whether that be positive or whether that be negative. And you can ask yourself, what is the legacy that I leave through my actions? Doctors leave legacies on mothers' lives when they safely deliver a baby, when they look after a patient's grandmother very well, when they look after a patient very well. That makes a difference in that person's life forever. And it's not only, you don't need to save a life to make a difference necessarily. Just being there for humans and touching their lives with your compassion makes a difference to them. So one of the questions that you can ask yourself in finding your meaning is, what is the legacy that I as a doctor leave to my patients? And you can actually make it a daily habit, because we all get tired of seeing patients. I'm being honest here, I'm a doctor myself who did it for many years, okay? You get tired of seeing patients and the same complaints over and over again. And after the 5th patient of the day, you feel not again. But one of the tips that you can do is, after every single patient that you see, just ask yourself the word legacy. What is the legacy that I left in that person's life before I rush to see the next one? And that can help you to find that meaning and remind yourself, not necessarily find the meaning, but remind yourself that what you do is meaningful. Meaningful not only to other people's lives, but also in your own life. Meaning is not something that you can decide you'll find tomorrow morning. There's no recipe. Frankl says that meaning ensues. It comes from. If something ensues out of, it comes from. It comes from an attitude. You'll remember we talked about the creational, experiential, and attitudinal values. Meaning comes from an attitude and a will to actually change my attitude towards life in general. So attitude modulation is something that is extremely important. And in our last video, we also talk about something called mirror conversations. And I'll only spend 2 or 3 minutes on that. Mirror conversations are some of the most difficult conversations that you'll have in your life. If you think you've had difficult conversations with other people in your life, try having a conversation with yourself. Okay? And sometimes we forget to have the conversation with ourselves. And conversation with yourself is not just sitting and looking out into the dullness and let your thoughts mull. Mirror conversations are where you actually take a chair, you go and sit in front of a mirror, you look yourself in the eyes, and you ask yourself the kind of questions that I've just asked. Dear self, hello, how are you doing today? And ask the self to answer, and to answer honestly, because you will know if you lie to yourself. Dear self, what it is that you want from life? Dear self, what is your legacy? What are the answers or the excuses that you're going to give for not being where you want it to be, in whatever way it is that you want to be? And again, I can't tell you what you want. You can only answer that to yourself. And these difficult conversations with that person called self will eventually lead to some difficult but profounding truths. And the self will continue lying to itself, because sometimes we do that, but it will eventually get honest, because you will know when you're not honest. So try mirror conversations. They're extremely difficult. The first The first day you ask questions, but the guy in the mirror doesn't want to answer, okay? Then you must just be a good psychologist and push through with it and say, okay, we'll come back again tomorrow and we'll have another discussion. And eventually you'll have to answer because, the questions just start coming. So that is one way of looking at things. There's a few things. The other thing is you can do imaginative scenarios in your brain. So the first thing I'd like you all to imagine is a world without healthcare. Imagine a world where there's no hospitals, there's no nurses, there's no doctors. Imagine that. Where your child, when he's born and he's sick, where you can't even get help for anything. We're back to the Stone Ages. Imagine that today, a world without healthcare. And then remind yourself that you are the people that actually supply that healthcare. A world without healthcare is a frighteningly dangerous, ordinary world. It's not a world that any of us can imagine. But it helps you to remember that you are the people that make that world possible. You, the doctor, you, the therapist, you, the nurse. You, the person, makes this world possible. And this is applicable to many, well, actually to all professions. Imagine a world without artists. Imagine it for a moment. Imagine a world without singers, a world without builders, a world without automakers or factory workers. And whichever profession you are in, imagine yourself a world without people like you. And you'll find that it's quite a frightening world. And even if you don't have a profession, you're a mother. Imagine a world without mothers. Or a father. Imagine a world without fathers. You may be a child. Just imagine yourself a world without children. You are those people that make this possible and that make this world turn around from day to day and make us who we are. And that in itself is leaving a legacy and is meaningful. So there's a few things that a few traps that we get into. One of the traps that we start chasing is a thing called money. And especially in the medical profession, that is something that many times leads to this cycle of burnout, etc. If you ask that person in the mirror that what they really want, you'll be surprised on how far down the list of things that that person in the mirror wants is money. It's actually quite far down the list. Yes, you need money, but why do you want the money? Most of us need the money because we want to give a good education to our children. We want to do good things with it. And those are exceptionally good reasons to want money. But be aware that money can be something that erodes at this world to meaning. Also remember that meaning is not only about career progression. We sometimes in our lives as doctors have this, we jokingly refer to the eternal MO, the eternal medical officer. And somehow we think of the eternal medical officer as the person that didn't get anywhere in the medical profession. But perhaps that eternal medical officer is 10 times happier than the successful specialist. It's all about what that person wants. And just getting the big title and the big job and the corner office and the teak desk and the Ferrari outside will make you no happier unless you've had these conversations with a person in the mirror, asking them what is it that they really want, not what it is that the world wants them to want. And then lastly, the person in the mirror also finds many excuses for his or her behavior. And one of them is, I'm a victim of. I couldn't find another job, so that's why I'm working in this emergency unit. I didn't get a registrar post, that's why I'm still here. I have to bring in X thousand rands per month because the rest of my family is indigent. The victim mentality, and the list can grow on and on and on. And be aware of this person in the mirror giving you excuses and not solutions, because that's a very favorite tactic from the man in the mirror, is to give you excuses and not solutions. So we are going to have a little bit of a discussion now, although there's not much time. I hope it was valuable, but I want to close with some thoughts. When doctors lose meaning, healthcare loses something precious. And when humanity loses doctors and healthcare professions, imagine how that would be. But when doctors rediscover meaning, they rediscover themselves. And what an amazing journey is that, to rediscover yourself, to ask yourself honestly what you are, what you do, what legacy and what meaning is there in what you do from day to day. And you'll be surprised of how valuable you actually are to the planet. You are a valuable individual, whether you're a healthcare professional or any other profession that you work in. You are valuable. And when you rediscover your value is when you will rediscover the value that you can add. The world will also rediscover its value in you. My hope is that this conversation may lead you to a bigger conversation, not only tonight. The first conversation to be had is with the man in the mirror, but hopefully it also leads you to discussions with your patients, with your loved ones, with everybody around you, about what is truly meaningful in life and what it is that you want and where you are going with whatever you're doing. And it will be amazing for you to find that the answers can make a huge difference, not only in your life, but in the life of many other patients. Thank you. That is all I had prepared for us tonight. So thank you very much, everyone. And very happy to have discussions. I know we are quite a lot, so let's do it by raising a hand, and I'd be happy to hear your thoughts, process, contributions, or anything. Anyone's welcome. For those new to Google, new to Teams, when you look in the top bar, there's a little hand, okay, and you can click on that, and it says raise. So you can just raise your hand over there, and we can have some further thought processes. But are you speaking to the man in the mirror at the moment? Annette, thank you. Let's hear what Annette has to say. Thank you, Annette.
Thank you so much for this talk. I'm not in the medical field. However, it was very, very meaningful in my life in general up to this place. And I wish that I'd known certain things that you included in this course before now. It would have made a big difference.
Thank you, Annette. Very much really appreciate that. Audrey, Dr. Audrey Landman. Audrey is one of our colleagues working with us, and she's also an emergency unit doctor. Audrey, let's hear what you have to say.
Good evening, Isak, and thank you very much for the insight you've shared with us. And also, it's nice to see Sean on the call. I haven't seen him in a number of years, so nice to see him around. I wanted to ask you, in terms of various levels of our colleagues, be it mid-level or even some of our senior doctors, who feel that they are stuck in their current career path and that they're not really progressing. What advice do you have practical advice do you have to them to get out of that rut and to really move forward, whether it's mentally or actually in terms of their career ladder? Thanks, Isak.
Audrey, it's a bit of a, what you're doing, what you're saying is a bit of a contradiction in terms in itself. So you're talking of their career, the career ladder is the word you used, and their mental self. So the two terms are not mutually exclusive, okay? And the two terms can actually work very well next to one another, because I can say that where I am today and I'm not a specialist, but where I am today, I'm extremely satisfied with. And I'm extremely happy with where my career ended, where I am. But that wasn't a career ladder. So it's not an answer that is an easy one. You have to speak to the man in the mirror to answer the question, Audrey. Because if the man in the mirror wants to be a specialist anesthesiologist, then go and do that. If the man in the mirror finds meaning through more time with my family and only a half-day doctor job, then the career ladder is not going to happen. But that's okay. It's completely okay. The career ladder also comes with some certain sacrifices that you have to make. And you have to know that for everything in life, there's a price to pay. The career ladder has prizes to pay, which are very high prizes. It's like the money ladder. It's a big master that you'll be working for. And sometimes that master is more of a burden than actually a pleasure. If you want to climb that career ladder and it is what you want to do, do it. And do not hold back. Do not hold back for a moment, because you only have one life. You only have one life. Climb the career ladder, but you have to understand it comes with sacrifices, but it's also very sweet if you make it, and that is what you really, really want to do. Then go out and do it. And I can't answer for you what your career ladder may be. I don't know. You have to speak to the man in the mirror. Sorry, Audrey, I don't have an answer, is the answer.
I think it's very sound advice. Thank you very much, Isak.
Thank you. Shannon Ray.
Good evening,
So
everyone.
Shannon Ray is also in the medical industry. She's what we call a clinical associate, which is a very important person in the medical industry. And Shannon Ray, thank you for joining us as well. Let's hear what you have to say.
Thank you, Doctor. I just wanted to ask, Doc, in your research, did you find that society and the implementation of, let's say, social media influencers in recent years has made more pressure on our doctors to be better and therefore making burnout occur quicker?
I have an answer for you, because actually my whole thesis started with a story called what is it? The missing ones, or the forgotten ones. So I wrote a story called The Forgotten Ones, which I'm happy to share with as well. Now, social media was not as big as it is today, but the same principle holds truth. So the forgotten ones, for those that are not doctors, right? How often do you think of the sacrifices that the healthcare industry workers do for you? The fact that the guys around this table who are in the medical industry work shifts, they work in an environment which is actually not nice to work in. Hospitals are not nice things, right? It's a stinky, dangerous environment where you get infections, needles lie around, everybody wants to sue you, and you're tired all the time, and nobody likes waiting. So when you see the patient, they're already grumpy. Okay, this is what flows over into social media, and what flows into the healthcare industry doesn't care about me. The healthcare industry is just there to make money. These are perceptions that are playing out on our Facebooks and our Instagrams every day. So Shannon, it contributes enormously to burnout. And you will remember during COVID, a few things happened. We stood outside at night sometimes cheering healthcare workers. You know, healthcare workers were everybody's favorites. They loved us, okay? Because they were very afraid of dying, okay? So now healthcare workers were the flavor of the day. It's now 5 years after COVID. Do you still see people standing, clapping hands, and have a moment of silence for the healthcare workers, the poor healthcare workers who are helping us? The answer is no. You go into social media now, and it's how to sue your doctor and all the other things. It's the same humans, the same human that loved the healthcare worker. 5 years later, those same healthcare workers, the same people that sit around the table over here, are now all of a sudden the villains. But lo and behold, where people run when they need help and when their life is in danger. I'm speaking honestly, plainly, truthfully, okay, to everybody. It does contribute to our burnout in our profession, the way that society views us, and the way that we view society as well, because I can put the shoe on the other foot as well. And I touched on that earlier. You also, as a healthcare worker, have sometimes quite a disjointed opinion of your patient, because you often think, why did they come at 2 in the morning? They could have seen their GP at 9 a.m. So why do they keep me out of bed? And why does my phone ring all the time? These people are just, bothering me. So we do the same to our patients as our patients do to us. And therefore, we don't have a very good relationship with our patients, because that patient that calls you in the 2 o'clock in the morning, they didn't set their alarm to get up and come to the doctor. Guarantee you they didn't. Okay? They came to the doctor at 2 a.m. because in their minds, it's an emergency. It may not be in your mind, but in their mind it is. And therefore, never shall the two meet. Luckily not so. But I think being aware of social media, being aware of burnout, and being aware sometimes of the bilateral semi-toxic relationship that we have with our patients going both ways is not helpful, neither to the patient nor the doctor. And this is where we have to find that connection, make it fun again and meaningful to help and be there for your patients, because that is truly what will make a difference in your career and your life. Shannon, I didn't answer your question either, so sorry.
No, you answered it very well. Thank you, Doc.
Perhaps time for 1 or 2 more questions or thoughts or opinions. Coral. Coral, for those people that don't know Coral is also one of, she's a senior member of the Viktor Frankl Institute, and it's her brainwave that get these conversations going. So thank you for that, Coral.
A pleasure. And Isak, thank you for your contribution tonight. It was very interesting. I wanted to bring up something that you said right at the beginning. You talked about 18-year-olds who have a dream and they become a doctor. I met and had a long conversation with a couple of doctors who said that 3/4 of the class that they were in did medicine because their friends did. So there's a good percentage, I think, I could be wrong, of doctors who got there through social pressure, or it was the right career to choose. So there's no heart in it, or no sustainable heart in it. And I don't expect you to answer that question, but they would definitely burn out very fast, I would imagine.
Coral, it's something that I love to talk about. So you definitely spot on with your assessment. Many of us sitting around the table here became doctors because of peer pressure. You're the cleverest kid in the class. You would like to have that title. Doctors are rich. All these stigmas that we have about being a doctor. And when you sit here and you realize that all those things were not necessarily true. So it wasn't a meaningful something that you didn't go out there with the impression of, I'm going to save the world. And that's okay. 9 out of 10 around the table here didn't go out to save the world. I certainly didn't. Okay. So you can, however, in whatever job it is, many of us are not in jobs that we actually want to be in. There's no shame in that. Okay. There are people that are lawyers that became lawyers because, you know, it's a very nice title, or a CA, you know, chartered accountant, or whatever it is, especially in the professions, because mom and dad wanted me to be a doctor. Oh, the family said if there's only a doctor in the house. Then you have to have a few mirror conversations, because there's also that true saying that says, when life gives you lemons, make lemonade. When you are now at the age of 30 and you now are that doctor, which you didn't really want to be, and the title is not so nice anymore, the hours are not nice, and you know what, it's not what I thought it's going to be. Ask the man in the mirror what you want. For me, it's been a meaningful profession, but I'll be honest about it. I never found very much, and I'm talking for myself now, the man in the mirror here is talking, okay? Not talking for anybody else. For me, in my career, I found my meaning by trying to improve the quality of healthcare, and specifically of emergency medicine. Therein lay my meaning, which ensued from my career. I'm not standing next to a patient's bed, but I find it as meaningful as my colleagues around the table standing next to a patient's bed. And I hope that I can contribute something through what I did, even though it's not standing next to that patient's bed. So if you don't want to see those patients, or the environment that you work in is not what you wanted it to be, it's not the end. It really isn't the end. It is a way of speaking to the man in the mirror and saying, perhaps I can make a difference in healthcare management, in research, in whatever it is that you want to have. And it's an honest conversation, it's an open conversation, and it's a very fun conversation, because it leads you to different pathways in your life.
And I suppose it's Isak, I suppose the question then is, the question then to ask oneself is, what can you do with the circumstances you find yourself in? Okay. Because to decide at 18 where you want to find yourself is a very difficult thing. So yes, you'll find yourself somewhere, but what within the context of where you find yourself can you do to find that place for yourself?
Absolutely, Carol. It goes back to where Viktor Frankl found himself. He found himself in a concentration camp, and he said to himself, I didn't want to be here, I don't enjoy being here, and I want to get out of here. But what can I do, Viktor Frankl, to make it better here in the place where I find myself? And it went out to become a whole meaningful life, which touched the lives of many other people. And we sit here tonight thanks to Viktor Frankl. And it started for him by being nearly dead in a concentration camp. We only have 4 minutes left, so I just quickly want to give Nthabiseng a chance, and then Carol, I think Mark is not with us anymore, he's excused himself, but if you would just close the meeting for us after Nthabiseng. Nthabiseng, thank you.
Thank you very much, Isak, for the presentation. I'm actually a medical doctor, a GP, and also doing some locum and sessional jobs in ED. My husband also is a medical doctor. So with this conversation, especially this last part where you were having a discussion on what Coral has just said, I remember how I came to do medicine. I actually wanted to help people solve problems, but it was more of a psychological it was more to help people psychologically. But then someone said to me, you can do medicine, and then in medicine, you get to learn about the mind and the whole body. So now I graduated in 2013. And I'm this many years into medicine now, but while I do medicine, and then I find myself following the biopsychosocial model. So I'm always about the mind, about purpose, about meaning, even in whatever consultation that I find myself in. But I'm also finding a challenge in the limitations of time during our consultations, where I tend to be with a patient for about 20, 30 minutes. And you know how it can be with the pressures in casualties in the GP practice where the queue is long. So I'm really struggling with getting the balance in that. And I think one of the things that I have realized that I'm very passionate about, it still went back. Actually, I enrolled in the logotherapy course last month. This is now my second month doing the logotherapy course. I found that this is exactly what my meaning is. And so I don't know at this point if, with the time limitations especially, if that would still be something that I can do within the medical field, or if I'm going to now end up having to branch into therapy without necessarily doing the clinical medicine. So I'm at that point where I don't really know what the end of this journey will be, because I'm still now getting more inclined into therapy, hence logotherapy, but I don't know how will I balance it off in medical care, or is it okay to just leave medicine altogether and then just go for therapy? Thank you.
Thank you, Nthabiseng. And what you describe, and thank you for your contribution, is a journey. It's a journey to finding what the man in the middle wants. And it's an exciting journey because I don't know where you'll end. I don't think you know where you'll end. As long as you end where you want to end. And sometimes you don't even end where you want to end, which is why it's a constant journey. So thank you, Nthabiseng, and thank you to everybody for tonight. I just want to reiterate what Mark has said. If you want to learn more about logotherapy, please, you can contact me. You all have my email address. You can contact Carl. Pan is the administrator of the Viktor Frankl Institute of South Africa. Happy to share her details with you as well. And long may logotherapy make a difference in people's lives. So, Carl, I'll leave you for the last few words, and then we can say goodbye.
Thank you, Dr. Isak. That was most interesting. And I can tell you that a lot of us here tonight are not in the medical profession. And I feel sure that each of us got enormous value out of your talk. Burnout applies to many careers, and as you say, many different branches of work. And I would encourage and maybe twist your arm to take the framework of what you did today and apply it for us in future to other careers. That would be wonderful. And thanks for everyone who attended. Next week, sorry, one more thing. Next week, Wednesday, Real Life Stories with Classy Vessels. Please join us, and yeah, we'll send you the link. Thank you.
Yeah,
thanks,
everybody's welcome as well. Just because you're not part of the Viktor Frankl Institute, everybody's welcome. Thank you.
Everybody, specifically if you're not part. This is aimed at everybody. Okay. Thanks, Isak. Thank you, Edward.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.